So today is one of those days where, like, you remember in high school or college where, like, it was such nice weather outside that the teacher or professor would just be like, you know what? Let's just have class outside. I wish we could do that. Like, you know what? Let's just record the podcast outside.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a nice break from the cold spell that we had. Though I'm glad the winter was as harsh as it was, because the last few were eerily mild. So I think, yeah, I don't know why, but you know,
couldn't imagine why.
Yep. So it's felt more like the seasons of old of yonder that we experienced growing up.
Is yonder before or after?
Oh, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it'll be in the future too. So who knows?
Hey, time is a flat circle. So
I will say this could be full spring though. So don't get fooled
by the spring. No, just enjoy what you can of this day. But by the time you guys hear it, it's gonna be a week after today. So who knows?
2 weeks after today.
Wait, is it? I kind of stopped doing the weeks thing because now
I know.
It's too far away from me.
Listen, we live busy lives. We got to record when we can. We got a little advanced time in. It's been working out. So
yeah, it has been. And just when I checked my calendar on my computer, it was 3:33 and 33 seconds. So thank you for making me look.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I got my first COVID vaccine shot dose.
Nice.
Dose, right? Yes, dose. Yesterday.
Yeah, first dose of 2.
Yes, they gave me the Moderna vaccine.
Nice.
It was interesting, but you know, it wasn't the hell that a lot of other people have had to go through. So I was just thankful for that. It was a pretty simple and straightforward process.
Yeah, I heard the second dose usually most people get a big reaction to. So
can't fucking wait.
Yeah, it feels like you have COVID, and hypothetically speaking, I hear it's pretty bad.
Yeah, you know, you've known people, you know, personally who have had it, and
yes.
Yeah, like even like just having it in general, I've heard like it's not like, you know, the symptoms are so varied. There are some people who have such a mild case, and then there are some people who have like a very severe case, and like
right.
It goes beyond just like, you know, the standard flu symptoms that we're normally told about, right?
Yes, exactly. I also heard if you did have COVID that you might get a really bad reaction to the shot as well. But, you know, I feel like they don't really have like concrete details on any of this stuff. You hear one thing and then you hear another. So who knows, I guess, until you experience it yourself, right?
Yeah, the thing that pissed me off was that they gave me like a sheet that said like, all right, you know, this has not been proven to prevent COVID-19. This is an emergency use, the blah, blah, blah. And that pissed me off so bad because, like, I don't know, I guess I heard somewhere in the past that it was emergency use, but seeing it on paper just as I was about to get it injected into me, I was like, man, like, they really could have paid us to stay home. And instead, they're like, no, the economy is so important that not only are we going to throw working class bodies at this virus, but we're going to give them an emergency, you know, approved vaccine, whereas it normally takes at least a couple years to get a good vaccine for something. We're just gonna
I agree with you to an extent. Obviously, we've talked about it that, you know, they wanted to open the economy, but like we're a year later and we would be years away from an actually FDA approved vaccine. So are you just gonna have everybody stay home and do nothing for 5 years? You can't, right? You got to get this vaccine out as quickly as possible, and that's why pretty much the whole world is using it at this point, or using other vaccines. So, you know, while I wish we could wait to see what it's going to be, I don't think they really have a choice at this point.
Well, Tyler, I would say that after, you know, at least a couple of months of people being able to not be at risk of COVID-19, the numbers would severely drop in the first place. And that would be a step towards something, even without a concrete, like, vaccine within the next, you know, like you said, 5 years, right?
Yeah. Something like that.
But yeah, I know where you stand on it. Everyone else knows where you stand on it and where I stand on it. So, you know, we've spoken about it. But yeah, that kind of... that pissed me off. I was like, fuck you guys. Fuck the government. I was just, ugh.
I mean, it's better. I guess it's better to at least be getting the vaccine than to be like, listen, don't worry about it. It's like the flu. because that's what they were doing in the beginning.
Yeah, by the time they find out about a lot of the like really severe down the line side effects, I'll probably be dead. So whatever.
Well, the good news is that it's actually going to turn us all into X-Men characters. The bad news is we're all going to look like Beast.
Oh, that's okay. So that's not terrible if we all look like Beast. I thought you were going to say this, and this scared me more because we're all going to be turned into X-Men characters, but we're all Gold Balls.
Dude, Gold Balls is the man.
I've only ever seen him in one thing, and he's like, oh, these balls are so gold. And like,
it turns out his powers are like way more powerful than what they originally were. I can't even remember what he does now, but it's like, I think he I don't know, he like throws like eggs that people can be reborn from or something like that. So it turned out to be Gold Balls was the strongest of them all.
Wow. I wonder if he gets to Omega level. I'll have to check out Comics Explained on YouTube. But before we do that, I want to tell you all about our latest review. That's right. Thank you so much to Benny and the Jets, who left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And you can do the same if you want your review read aloud at the top of the podcast. Here we go. From Benny and the Jets, a review titled, Was I a Neoliberal Shill? Great podcast. Had I listened to this 4 to 6 years ago, I probably would have gotten bent out of shape about your socialist stances. Instead, I find myself nodding in agreement with y'all the majority of the time. The only thing, I'd never heard y'all come out of my mouth like that, and sorry, this is me now. I text it all the time, and now that I've said it out loud, it doesn't feel right. The only thing I'd like to hear is a bit more academic or theoretical framework when you quote-unquote shoehorn in a theme. And Benny and the Jets, they're both, or all of you, or just one of you, you're using my words. I always say a shoehorn in themes because I undercut myself. I think there was a great opportunity in your latest podcast when you started talking about credit scores to give us more than just a surface level understanding of these themes. Keep up the good work. And yeah, probably. I would say check the show notes and sources, but I have been slacking on those lately.
I was gonna say that's kind of where I think we put more of that information, but not lately. So you got us.
Yeah, you got us. No, that is really a great point. I think part of it is just, sometimes we bring up themes that we've mentioned in previous podcasts, like Fast Color from last week. We mentioned generational trauma and kind of didn't really expound upon it that much because we'd already discussed in earlier podcasts. But you're absolutely correct. I've only mentioned the credit score thing once, so I'll throw it in the show notes and sources for that episode as soon as I remember which one it was. And then I'm going to, and then I think we'll have to talk about it at another point in a different episode because it's definitely bound to come up with the stuff we review.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we both kind of just learned about the origin of it within the last month or two, right? So it's kind of new for us too, but I think it is helpful for people to understand why the DAC's so stacked against us and future generations. So yeah, why not, right? We should definitely talk about it.
Yes, but when we don't, I'm going to quote your QAnon red-pilled uncle and say, do your own research. Thank you so much, Benny and the Jets. That was a great review. We really appreciate it. And with that, Ty, do you want to bring in the theme music?
Yeah, let's bring it on in. I've never heard the theme music of our own podcast.
Man.
Nope.
I can't wait until we hang out, and I'm gonna be like, dude, listen to this awesome song, and then it's gonna be like, all right, bring the theme.
I'm like, this is shit. Who created this? This is horrible.
Yeah, I often think that too. That's why I don't listen to the podcast often.
Oh.
Welcome back to the Politipop Podcast, the podcast where we read between the lines of your favorite faux representation children's movies on Disney Plus and discuss the social and political themes within. I am your co-host, Mike Booch, a.k.a. the Soy Boy Pseudo-Intellectual, and in the second seat, as always, is my co-host, Ty.
Howdy.
And I want to remind you all that if you're listening on YouTube to like and subscribe to our channel, like the video you're listening to, subscribe to the channel, that way you never miss one. Or if you're listening to us on another podcatcher of choice, just remember you can listen to us anywhere and make sure to leave us a review so that way we can read it at the top of the podcast and it really helps out in the algorithm. And it's a way that you can support the podcast free of charge. And today we are reviewing what movie, Ty?
Soul.
That's right, Soul. 2020, Disney Plus. This was a home release, right? This was a COVID time.
It was originally going to be a theatrical release, but I believe they actually had a finished production in quarantine, post-production, and then they released it on Disney Plus because they figured why not, right? And the surprising thing though was it was not a premium movie like they've been doing with I think Mulan, Raya and the Dragon. Like you didn't have to pay anything extra if you had Disney Plus. Soul was available to you, so that was kind of a nice bonus.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I really want to watch Raya and the Last Dragon, or
Yeah.
Raya and the Last Dragon. I don't know which one is pronounced because I haven't seen the movie.
Same.
Or really watched the trailers, but I don't want to watch it $30 bad, you know?
Yeah, I'm like, damn, you can rent the new movie on Amazon for like 20, right? And they're charging $30 on Disney Plus. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, and that's like a brand new movie you can rent from Amazon.
Yeah.
But yeah, what did you think about this movie before you saw it? Did you have any preconceptions as to what it might be?
Nothing. I knew nothing about it. I knew it was about it had the first African-American male African-American lead, and he died. That's all I knew. So going into it, I was like, I don't know. We'll see. And I actually got to watch it twice, luckily. I watched it when it first came out, and then I rewatched it before we recorded this podcast. So.
Yeah, so I did the same. I watched it once, but it was on New Year's Eve. I wasn't really in the, in a frame of mind to be paying that much attention to it. And then yeah, I watched it throughout the week, as us folks do nowadays. We watch movies in parts. I think it's something that happens after you hit 30, and you just start watching movies in parts.
It took me 3 nights to watch this the second time. 3 nights.
It took me 3 days to watch it. Jesus Christ. We haven't talked about it either.
It's not even that long. Like, I was
It's
like,
not.
I got 40 minutes done. All right, cool. I'm going to go to bed. Like, it was like...
Oh, man. Yeah, so I thought this was going to be Black Cocoa. And it was not. Now,
No, it was not.
Now, once again, same thing with Raya and the Last Dragon. I'd seen trailers on TV in passing, but I didn't really go out of my way to be like, all right, what is this movie about? But that was kind of it. And I was off. It was definitely not Black Cocoa.
Well, I think this is what's interesting is like it's kind of what a lot of racists or conservatives kind of like criticize like something like Coco for, and be like, why does it have to be all about the fact that they're Hispanic, right? Like, why can't he just be like Hispanic? So like this movie's like he just happens to be black, right? But it's really not about being black or much about doing that, just about the story, and that main character happens to be black. So I feel like they were trying to appease a certain group of people there, while also being like, hey, look, it's Pixar's first, black main character.
Yeah, that was rough. But you know what else is rough? Listening to us discuss this movie without knowing that there's a spoiler alert coming. So guess what, everybody? Set your eyes to the great beyond, or get involved in something and go to the zone. And when you're in it, you'll hear the spoiler warning. That means that if you don't want to know detailed plot spoilers, maybe detailed, we'll see how deep we go, for the rest of this podcast about Soul, then go watch Soul before you listen to the rest of this podcast. But now that the spoiler warning is out there, I can hear the buttery baritones of my best bud, Ty. Please give him the plot.
Soul, after landing the gig of a lifetime, a New York jazz pianist suddenly finds himself trapped in a strange land between Earth and the afterlife.
A near jazz pianist? Oh, a New York jazz pianist. Sorry.
Yes, a New York jazz pianist.
I thought it said near for a sec, and I was like, yo, fuck IMDb.
I
Like,
know,
just
they're
'cause
being
he's a
such
teacher.
dicks about it.
I was like, man, they're just like his mom, bro. Like,
Yeah, get a real
watch the
job,
movie.
loser.
they didn't learn anything. Now, there is one thing I want to say at the top, and I want to say this because 2020 has been an interesting year for me. I used to be of the mindset that you could really only love something or hate something, and that was it. And if you loved something, anytime someone criticized it, and I don't mean like an actual person, I mean a movie, I mean a TV show, I mean a song, a band. Anytime someone criticizes it, you take it as a personal attack. And I want to thank all of the shitty politicians that are working for the United States government, because they have shown me that bad people can do good things, good people can do bad things, that, you really should just take what you like from something and then and be aware of the bad things also, so that's what I'm doing with the art that I'm interested in. And I actually have a lot of, I don't know if they're great things to say about this movie, but there are moments of this movie that fucking hit me hard. Like, this is really an existential roller coaster ride. But there is something I want to bring up at the top, and you'll find it in the show notes and sources, which will be up today when it comes out. All right, so Benny and your Jets, all of y'all can get together, go to the show notes page today, Friday, March 19th. Friday, March 19th. And you will see you will see all of our show notes caught up in addition to this one. But in the show notes, we have an article, and it's titled "Representation Without Transformation." And it brings up the idea that every time Disney has had a person of color in the lead of their films, they always end up being turned into something else that's not a person of color. Now, you've seen a lot more Disney than I have growing up. Mm-hmm. Is that something you've noted, something you could back up? What do you feel about that? You're coming for your brand, dog.
There's so few people of color in Disney movies that I would say probably, that's pretty accurate. I don't think there's really too much accurate representation. That's why I think I like Coco so much, because Coco, I think, did a really good job of being, a good representation and telling a good story. I mean, I love that film. I think it's great. So, but a lot of other Disney films, Pixar films, not really.
So they actually bring up Coco in this article. I'm going to read a few moments from this article, but it'll be in the show notes and sources. It's from Tor.com. To understand what Soul has taken, we need to look back at the American animated movies I've been given over the last 3 decades. When I was growing up in the 90s, there were a few major films that championed diversity on screen. Aladdin, Pocahontas, and Mulan all featured characters of color in their lead roles. Their stories were creative, inspiring, and funny. Although they weren't overly concerned with accurate representation and storytelling, these diverse stories showed me how life might be for people that didn't look like me. They gave me a little more insight into cultures I hadn't seen depicted in the media before. Through their stories, I understood more about the world I lived in. And the writer mentions at the beginning that they are Andrew Chava. Yeah, he's black and Puerto Rican, so he mentions that at the beginning. He says, while black characters like Frozone from The Incredibles were, wait for it, cool, they were frequently cast as side characters in someone else's story. When would I get to see someone like me take the lead in an animated role? Disney promised to answer my question in 2009. The House of Mouse announced that an African-American woman named Tiana would star in a princess film. After waiting for nearly 20 years, I was finally going to see a black person take the lead in a major studio cartoon on the big screen. And they turned her into a frog. All right, that's enough from the article. But the writer goes on to talk about, that there was actually a lot in Princess and the Frog around Tiana's character that would have been great storytelling, but they didn't explore it because she turned into a frog. Right. They talk about even Miguel in Coco, they say, which he says is pitch perfect, which I believe Coco is a pitch perfect film, starts transforming into a skeleton around 28 minutes in. He isn't fully human again until about an hour later. And I didn't think about that, but I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess you got a point. Will Smith in that spy movie turns into a pigeon. Cusco, an Incan emperor, turns into a llama. And at that, Cusco is played by David Spade, so do with that what you will. But we also see that they continue in this movie the trend of the lead character, Joe. He is, honestly, now I'm wondering if he's the lead. Like, I know technically he is, because
here's a little bit of trivia for you.
Ooh,
he was actually not the lead originally. It was going to be 22, and the movie was about 22 trying to find a purpose to get to Earth or figure out what she was going to do, and they bring in Joe to kind of help inspire her. But while they were writing it, they decided to flip that on its head and make Joe the main character. And he wasn't even originally going to be a black character, but when they went with him being a jazz musician, they felt that was the most accurate portrayal. So I guess you could almost argue the criticism is more of Disney and Pixar overall than it is of this actual film, because the film weren't going for that. They weren't, that's not even what the story was originally about, about black representation. It just happened to work out that the main character wound up being black. But the fact that, Disney and Pixar haven't done a good job of that in general makes it stand out, I think, so much more.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great point, because if they had, let's say, done Princess and the Frog and Tiana stays a princess throughout the whole movie, then seeing something like this would be a different story. Because let's be honest, they do all sorts of stuff with their white characters, right? They make them into animals, they make them into wizards and all this other stuff. Like, they do some pretty wild stuff, but they also have so many white characters that are grounded in reality and grounded as serious heroes, both men and women. And this was that Finn moment, that you mentioned, that was like, oh, we're gonna see it. But even in the trailer, boom, he gets turned into a blue soul creature. And I don't remember how the rest of the trailer goes, because like I said, I haven't really seen it. But in the movie, after being a soul creature, he gets back to Earth to get into his body, and he becomes a cat.
Right. Yeah.
So that is the, just something I wanted to mention at the top of the movie, and not as necessarily this is my critique of it, but just that this is something that we're both acknowledging here, for those of you who do have that as a critique. And long story short, do better, guys. But with that, we meet Joe, the main character of this film, arguably, because the other thing is, like, there's also the trope of, like, the magical Negro, like. And I know he's not there technically, but had they kept 22 as, like, the official lead, I think that they would have fell into that territory. Like,
right.
Oh, I can't find my purpose in life, and he's like, oh, don't worry, I'll come along. Like, if they.
But Joe might not even have been black. He might not have even been black. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't sure if they were going to go that route. So I feel like the story's changed so much. But yeah, they definitely could have. And they have a magical. Okay,
so I didn't know Joe was going to be black. I was going to be black originally as the mentor. Okay.
Yeah, they decided once he was a jazz musician, they were going to make him black. So, like, he might have been white originally. I don't know. They didn't really clarify what they decided, but they made a couple different decisions there. But there is a magical character like a guru in the film. So if that had been Joe, that would have been pretty bad.
But Joe is a man who has passion in his heart for the genre of jazz. Similar to when we reviewed Into the Spider-Verse, we said that, like, there's a lot of black culture in this movie, but they don't make it a point to, like, point out that it is black culture. It's just a matter of, like, this is who the character is, and we're showing you this. So,
right.
We see that, when Joe's father introduces him to it, he says, like, this is one of our few, like, no, I don't think he says few, because there's so many contributions. I don't think he would do it. He says, this is one of our great contributions to the United States. This is jazz. And, for those of you who aren't aware, there are so many, like, almost all music in the United States owes itself to African roots at the core.
Yeah.
And then, of course, which those then blossomed once on American soil into, jazz and rock and blues and so many other genres that would later go on to inspire.
I have a pretty good article for the show notes that we can link about kind of the history of jazz and its ties to, African Americans and kind of when, like, the Harlem Renaissance was happening, jazz was kind of happening at the same time. So they were pretty much intertwined and, just how important it was, for that culture.
Thank you, because that is literally all I had, and I don't need the Jets coming for me. But also just talking about using jazz as a verb, which they do very often in this film, and they make it kind of like a joke, but it sounded right to me, like jazzing, like, when you're spitting that jazz, like, you're just kind of improvising with whatever you're doing. It could be stand-up comedy, it could be, flirting with somebody, it could be, singing a song, it could be freestyling, and of course it could be literally playing jazz. Like, it is, jazzing, I think they use as something that's, yes, like, it owes itself to the name, to the genre of music, but, like, in it is just like he says, right? It brings your soul out. Like, whatever it is that brings your soul out while you're doing it, like, you're jazzing, baby.
Yeah.
So that is also a form of jazz that's used in this film. Unfortunately, Joe feels that he has he's been underutilized as a musician. He has gone to be a teacher, and it's kind of been like a temporary thing for him up until he gets an offer for a full-time job, which he is pressured by, himself, obviously, but also, more importantly, his mother to take the job because, he needs health insurance, he needs benefits, and she wants him to have a steady and a secure career, which is a real pressure that we all face. And have we spoken about it before on the podcast? A little bit, right?
Just briefly, but this movie, I think in particular, takes an interesting stance on it. Right, like even right in the beginning when the teacher or the principal offers him the full-time position, he's like, "You're full-time, that means pension and all this stuff, health benefits, and like it's the greatest thing in the world." And at times, I felt like this movie was almost saying like, "Give up on your dreams and like live like life the way you're supposed to." And other times, it felt like it wasn't saying that, but it definitely kind of went back and forth for me with that kind of information.
Yeah, they really did toe the line, especially when we talk about lost souls. Joe's soul is removed from his body shortly after he gets the opportunity of a lifetime. One of his old students who he inspired growing up, which is a recurring theme in this film about how kind of like inspiring people in and of itself is something worthy of your time and energy, and it's an amazing thing to do. I know damn well that, like in my own experience, like I said, I've worked with the special needs population for since I was 14 years old, so going on 16 years now. And whereas that is like incredibly rewarding work, like and something that I'm naturally kind of talented at, I've always wanted something else, something for me, something creative. So like I really get where Joe's coming from here. And also with just having the pressure of like, all right, you got to do this with your life. Like you're of a certain age, you need to do this. So he ends up going to this club where the great Dorothea Williams is going to be playing with her quartet, and he has the opportunity to try out for her. And she says, all right, you got the gig, show up tonight, teach. And he fucking gets into an accident and goes into a coma. Does he actually die? Was he going to a coma? What do you think about it?
I think once he goes into the great beyond, he'll die. So I think he's kind of stuck in between.
Okay, so it's like a purgatory situation.
Right.
Well, his body is very literally stuck in between. But yeah, Joe is kind of in this purgatory situation. He's on his way to the great beyond, where a lot of other people are going, where a lot of other... Do they call them souls? I guess they do, right? Because the title of the film is Soul. But yeah, so all of these other souls are on the way to the great beyond. He doesn't feel that he's ready. He finds his way out, and I think he falls off the conveyor belt or something.
Well, he feels like he finally had his big break, right? Like his entire life, he's been waiting for that moment to play, in a professional jazz band, play on stage, and he feels like that's like his real moment. And as soon as he gets it, he's dead, right? So he's going to do everything he can to get back to Earth because he feels like he's left so much unfinished business there, and that that's kind of where he stands. He's just not ready to move on, and which is interesting because you see all these other souls, right? Like thousands and thousands of them all ready to go. They're all ready to rest and put Earth behind them, and they don't want to go back. And Joe
good for them, by the way, that they do.
Yeah, I mean, like
that's amazing. We should be so
great.
Lucky,
Absolutely, who doesn't. Who's going to not feel like they left unfinished business, So that's great. But, he fights his way back, and that's, where he kind of runs into 22 inadvertently, right?
Yeah, so he makes his way to the U seminar. And the U seminar, as opposed to being at the end of people's lives where they go into the great beyond, it's actually at the beginning of people's lives, before they go to Earth. And the U seminar matches mentors with mentees, and the mentors are individuals who have already gone through their life, and they're ready to pass on some knowledge and help someone else find their spark. Which for most of the movie, we're led to believe your spark is your reason for living, your reason for existence. And once you find that, once you find your purpose in life, you can go to Earth, where by being born, you'll forget about it and spend your entire life searching. The thing about 22 is that she is unmentorable. They have put the best with her, and she has still she has brought them all to their wits end, and wits end, yeah, to their wits end,
Yeah.
And we're talking Copernicus, we're talking Abraham Lincoln, we're talking Mother Teresa, all of quote unquote the greatest people in history, and she has made all of them tap out because she can't find her spark. And what I think is interesting is that all those people were technically like, they were definitely complete people. And Freud was one of them too. So, and the one that gets her to find her spark is somebody who doesn't feel complete. So I really like that idea in the
Well, I mean, she's named 22 because of Catch 22, right? Like the paradox of to find out life is worth living by living life. So it's kind of comes full circle for her.
Do they mention that in the film? Or
no, it's actually some trivia. Yeah.
That's nice. I like that.
And I think if you really think about the name, obviously it makes sense. But she's been there for, I think it is like thousands of years, right, waiting to find her spark, and it just hasn't happened. And just living in Joe's shoes for less than a day finally kind of awakens it in her. Eating pizza, right, talking with one of his students, kind of just experiencing things that you couldn't experience any other way, and that finally makes her want to actually be alive and come to Earth and give it a shot.
Yeah, she ends up going to Earth with Joe. His plan is to help her find her spark and then use the Earth pass to get into his body because she actually doesn't want to live anyway. There's pain, there's all sorts of shit. She doesn't want it. But yeah, when they finally get to Earth, she ends up in Joe's body, and Joe ends up in the body of a service cat. So we talked about that at the beginning. We'll leave it there. Yeah. But yeah, through trying to get 22 in his body to get ready for the gig and make it to this to the appointment tonight, where by the way they are going to get their souls switched back to the right place. I forgot to mention that in the middle of it they end up in this zone where they meet a guy named Moonstar, or is it Windstar? Sorry, I was watching New Mutants yesterday.
Moonwind.
Moonwind. Okay, so but yeah, so they meet a man named Moonwind, and we find out, this is really cool to me, that like this plane of existence is kind of like a thin spot in reality, because we have a soul that's not born, a soul that's not alive anymore or ish, and then we have Moonwind? Yes, we have Moonwind, who is one of the many souls that comes into the zone. The place where you are in your creativity, where you're just doing it. Like you lose yourself in the, I'm getting kind of emotional talk about it.
Yeah.
But like when you lose yourself in the thing you're doing, and I'm sure all of you have had that thing there. And if you haven't, I really hope that you do. To quote, to reference last week's episode, I hope that you see the colors.
It's interesting too because he's aware of it. Most people aren't. You're in the zone. You're doing your thing. I don't think time or anything really matters to you when you're doing that. But he is aware of where he is, and his job is to help find souls that have kind of lost their way here, right? That are overcome with grief and anxiety. And there's even kind of a funny moment where he helps one such soul who turns out to be like a
hedge fund manager.
A hedge fund manager, right? Yeah. And the guy's like, oh my, like he has this like realization that his job is horrible, and that he wants to live and actually be happy instead of being like miserable on Wall Street. So he runs away from his job. But yeah, so Moonwind goes around helping other souls like that, and he's actually friends with 22.
Yeah, the way that they helped him too, like I'm sorry to rewind, but like they talk about these lost souls that, they say when you like become too obsessed with your passion. So it stands to reason that maybe at the beginning of his career, the hedge fund manager actually liked his job. Maybe he liked the money he was making, the strippers he was getting blown by, but whatever.
It's very Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, exactly. They should have chosen anyone else. But an accountant. You're trying to help people. You're stuck at your job in the numbers, whatever. But they grab his soul and they start like chanting around him and playing bongos to bring his soul back, so he's no longer a lost soul. And it's interesting to imagine this balance, because I've been there. Like the idea of like, all right, like you love doing something, but then if you become obsessed with it, like let's say like you rely on it for your only source of income, what might have been voiceover for fun, hypothetically, becomes voiceover for survival, and it's a very different emotion you get when you do it.
Right.
But yeah, that absolutely was a great moment. Thank you for reminding me of it. But yeah, so Moonwind is going to be the one to bring them back, and through their adventure, yeah, like you said, Joe gives 22. I just say her because it's Tina Fey's voice, so
right.
22 technically is not gendered. But yeah, so he gives 22 the pizza, and 22 later has a bagel and gets a lollipop at one point too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think earlier on we see that moment where Joe kind of gets to view his life. Like 22 shows him how to see his whole life, kind of like a snapshot of it, and a lot of it's just him sitting around watching TV or just doing very boring stuff, right? And he realizes like his life is meaningless. He's never done anything that's really he feels has impacted the world, and I think he feels like he's wasted all this time. And Joe's not necessarily an old man, right? But he's probably in his 40s, I'd say.
I could say late 30s, mid to mid 40s.
He's lived a good portion of his life, and he's never, he feels like he's wasted it now. And I think this is really depressing, and I know it's something that I've experienced.
I mean, and you're not the only one who's felt that before. Once again, I think 30 on is when it hits, much like watching a movie in parts, a single film in parts, or 25 and on. I remember after I hit 25 years old, my nihilism really started to creep in. But were you going to be like? I think you were going to be more specific about that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, kind of like what you said. It just hits you. I feel like there's times where you realize, hey, I've wasted so much time. You ever have I have my 2 days off, right? And sometimes I'm tired and I just sit around, watching TV with my girlfriend or, playing video games for a couple hours. And then you go back to work and you're like, man, I should have been using that time to be creative. I should have been writing. I should have been, changing the world somehow. I should have been out doing activism, like whatever it might be. And you just feel like, you wasted time, and you think back, the older you get and the things that you've done and the things you wish you had done. And I think it can be pretty depressing, and to see your whole life laid out in front of you like that, I'm sure it's devastating.
Yeah, like sometimes I think about it, like if let's say aliens were to look into my life, right? Like they have like a reality show feed of my apartment, and let's say they can't see the screen, like they can't see what's on my screens. If they can't see what's on my computer or my TV or my phone, I'm literally just a man who sits.
That's interesting.
Like that, and I thought of that long before I started smoking weed. That's really interesting. If somebody else could see you and and also like with my dog, like she's probably all the time like, what the fuck are you guys looking at? Like, you know what she loves to look at? The sun. Like that's like her favorite fucking thing. Like, but yeah, it's it is this wild amount of pressure to like, I don't know. Being a creative is tough, and I think the reason we have so much pressure to turn our passions into money-making resources is because, like, that's all. Like, you have to make money to survive in a capitalist society. We've spoken about it.
But your worth is also measured by that. Like, if you're not successful, people think you're a loser, right? And what is success? Is success enjoying what you do? Is it writing a movie with your friend and then going out and shooting it? Or is it winning the Academy Award and making millions of dollars? And unfortunately, most people will weigh the money and the fame as kind of success. And I think that's why it can feel so overwhelming when you don't reach those heights, in whatever your passion is, or even just your career. Maybe you're passionate about the job you're already in, and you find like you're just not getting there, right? And I think that's just it's important to remember not everybody's going to have the same level of success, and it's okay not to reach those same heights. You could work at a grocery store. You don't have to be a manager, right? You don't have to be the regional. You can just do your job, and if you do your job well, then people will remember you, and you are making a difference. And I think that's one of the themes of this movie, right? Like Joe is coming to realize by the end that He's had an impact on his students. That's a big part of it, I think, and that his life's not meaningless because he has influenced people and made a difference in their lives, and who knows what they're going to go on to do one day. And that there's always that saying, like, those who can't do teach, and I think that's a shitty saying. You know, it is a shitty saying. That's bullshit, because if nobody teaches, then no one's going to learn and no one's ever going to do anything, right? So
no one can do if no one teaches. Yeah.
There's some shitty teachers out there, let's be honest, but the really good ones you'll always remember, right? The ones that made an impact in your life, that inspired you, that made your experience in school a little bit better. They're the ones you're always going to fucking remember. You're going to talk about them, and you know, if they made an impact in your life, they probably did it for a lot of other people too.
Now that you mention it, I haven't told many people this story, and mostly it's because it was so long ago and I didn't really think it was that impactful, you know, but as you get older, you start kind of connecting the dots, right? And I was 10 years old. This was just after this was my first year in a new school. I moved around a lot as a kid, and everybody knew that I was like the poor kid from a single parent family. Like, it's a small town. Everybody knew that. I didn't know they knew that. But, like, everybody was, like, trying to be super nice to me, you know, which, don't get me, like, it's great. You know, I also had a shitload of, you know, bullies, too. But anyway, you know, my father, probably now that I'm looking back at it, it's because he was smoking crack all the time. He would spend most Sundays, you know, well, most weekends, just passed out all day until, like, 6 p.m.
Jeez.
So, like, what was I supposed to do all day if my father was asleep? So one day I remember I drew him. I drew him sleeping. I watched his face and I just drew it, and I showed it to my art teacher at school. And she was so impressed with how it came out. Like, you know, obviously it wasn't great if I was 10 years old, but it was like, you know, when you could tell a kid has natural talent. And I remember the last day of school that year. I don't even remember her name, dude. But she gave me a bunch of art supplies so I could draw at home. And I never bought them. No one ever bought them for me. Right. She gave me a bunch of art supplies.
That's amazing.
Then here I am trying to make money from my art, you know, how many years later, or even just getting back into art, you know, I have my tablet, I have that, like art is such a part of my fucking life in one form or another. And I never really realized that, you know? But it is, those things, they do make a difference. And, you know, at one point I kind of questioned, like, is this movie celebrating, and I have no better word for it. There are better words for it. Is this movie celebrating mediocrity? That was one thing that hit me.
Yeah, I felt the same. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, like, you know, it's okay. I think the idea is that, you know, just like you were saying, what is the definition of success? Everybody has their own definition. And I think if you are reaching your definition of success, that's what's important. You know, my definition of success might be getting a 5-star review from Benny and those fucking Jets to read on today's podcast, okay? You know, but I've been talking to my wife about it without getting too personal. Work hasn't been easy for her recently. And I said, like, being the boss is tough. It comes with a lot. You've been complaining about your job ever since I've been with you, even before you were at the position you're at. You can go to a supermarket and probably be happy just leaving your work at the supermarket. Like, you know, I know the money is different, but, like, you know, if you could get a comparable position, like doing less, like a comparable paying position, maybe not that specifically, but, like,
you mean not as a manager, right? Like, just as a crew member?
I mean, she could probably kill it as a manager too. You know, I know financially she wouldn't be making the same amount, but I mean, let's say another job. Let's say it's not grocery specific.
I was gonna say, because I'm a manager and it follows you home no matter where you work, man. So,
well, yeah, if you're a manager at anything, that's the problem. Like, it'll follow you home. Like, you know, but that's the man. I knew we were gonna get into some existential stuff, but that's a whole other thing too, right? Because it's like, all right, well, the only way to get paid more is to become more responsible and get promoted. But then when you do, like, you're fucking, like, stuck there, dude. Like, you gotta, like, keep making that money. And yeah, like you said, it does come home with you, you know, because you have so much responsibility. You're getting phone calls at home and stuff. It's I don't know, you know, you gotta. It really sucks that we have to weigh happiness versus you know, versus security. And
right.
And you know, just so you know, if anyone here hasn't read the Communist Manifesto yet, I'm pretty sure it mentions that, like, you know, that better work week hours actually allow the working class to pursue their creative endeavors and be more fulfilled that way. Just so we know.
And well, what country is it? Is it Sweden or I think it's Sweden or Norway, right? That actually
it's always one of those fucking two
has
that
4-day work weeks. I believe they decided to try out, and it is incredibly helpful. It gives people so much more time to
just
like
one
I said,
day. Like,
yep. Because
imagine,
I mean,
that's not even that much.
Like I know for me, like I get 2 days off. Like one day I'm recuperating, and then one day I'm catching up on errands. If you have that, anytime I take a third day off, I request a third day off. It makes such a difference to my week because that day I can kind of have like whatever I want to do. I can hang out with my friends or or pursue something creative or just find something I feel more inspired. Cleaning the house even. Those kind of things. Like it helps you find the time to get all those things done. Where 1 or 2 days just isn't enough.
And the other thing is, like, when you do have just those 2 days, that now it becomes stressful trying to figure out what you do to relax. Like, all right, like this much of my time is going to be spent, like you said, cleaning the house, doing laundry, stuff like that. And then all right, this person wants to hang out. I mean, let's say it's not COVID times, right? This person, or let's say it is, right? I want to play Xbox. Your girlfriend wants to watch this show. Your brother wants to play PlayStation. Like, now you have to start. Okay, like who do I give my time to? And then that's stressful. Like,
agree. Yeah, very much so.
Our society is fucked. Like, like we just. Even at home, work it affects us, guys. I just want to. I don't know if I was gonna have a good moment to share this, so I'm just gonna shoehorn it in right now. This quote that 22 says. She says, like my mentor George Orwell used to say, state-sponsored education was like the rattling of a stick inside a swill bucket. Which
that's awesome. I wrote that down too. Yeah, that was a moment I really wanted to talk about actually because. It's one of my favorite scenes, right? Like Joe's still in the body of the cat, 22's in his body, and the student comes and Joe's just like, just tell her you're busy. And she's like, no, let me, she like goes out and hangs out with her. And, the student's like, I want to quit. I don't want to play in the band anymore. I don't want to play instruments. Like, I just want to quit. And 22 is just like, okay, right? like
yeah,
do it.
Because 22 does that all the time. 22 is like, all right, like if you don't want to do it, you should do it. But it ends up kind of working like reverse psychology, even though 22 doesn't mean to.
Yeah, because the student's kind of like, well, I mean, before you tell me to quit, maybe you should just hear what I've been practicing. And then, she plays some beautiful music, and it's very clear that she doesn't actually want to quit, right? Like she needs that push, that inspiration from her teacher. And, 22, it doesn't mean to, but does kind of help inspire. And she's like, oh, maybe I won't quit. And she leaves, right? And she doesn't really understand why that was, She doesn't understand why. And Joe tells 22 it's because she loves to play. That's what she actually loves to play. She doesn't actually want to quit, And it's just such a great scene. And yes, that George Orwell quote's used there. 22 also says the ruling class's core curriculum stifles dissent. It's the oldest trick in the book. I also like that as well.
Thank you. That was another thing she said. There was one in there that I was like, comrade, what?
I know, right?
Huh?
Like, all right.
More of that children's animation that's actually communist propaganda. We'll talk about later on in the podcast.
But I would argue that what Joe's doing isn't core curriculum, right? He's inspiring people to like these kids to find something they love, like he did, right? Like he loves jazz music, and maybe not all of his students, but this particular one also loves to play. And,
did she say it in? Did 22 say that in reference to his teaching?
Well, she said it to the kid about quitting. Like she said it right after that George Orwell.
Oh, okay,
quote,
okay.
Yeah.
So music in general. Okay, yeah.
And I don't think she really, because 22 doesn't understand what passion is, right? She hasn't experienced it yet. So, but it's still a valid argument.
Yeah. But yeah, it was that was great. We also see that can I go to the barbershop moment?
Yeah, it's my next note.
All right, great. So yeah, plot stuff happens. Joe's hair is bad. We need to get to the barbershop where we meet the best acting I've ever seen from Donnell Rawlings, who's known from the Chappelle Show as Ashy Larry and a bunch of other hilarious characters. But yeah, he plays Dez, the barber. And for those of you who are not aware, I mean, they made several movies about barbershops. The barbershop is an incredibly important place in Luke Cage. Like, just by watching black entertainment, you can kind of realize that the barbershop is a very sacred and important place. There's a lot more that goes on there other than just cutting hair. There's therapy.
Yeah, yeah, in a way, yeah.
There's these amazing moments. But yeah, so he does have to go to the barbershop. Des takes him as an emergency case, and 22 is just talking about their own life, right?
Well, 22 just talking, I think, and starts asking questions, and asking Des, and Des brings up how he wanted to be. Well, I think 22's bring up like finding your purpose in life, and how like, oh, you always wanted to be a barber, right? And he's like, well, no, I always wanted to be a veterinarian. And she's just like, oh, well, like, what happened? Do you regret like being a barber, more or less? And that's when he kind of says, no, he loves it. He loves his job. He gets to meet interesting folks, and he gets to make them happy. And the chair is so special to him. When people sit there, he gets to learn about who they are and talk to them and make them look great. And he really, really enjoys his job. And I think Joe is kind of surprised to hear all this. He's been going here probably for a long, long time, right? He knows Des, but he doesn't know anything about Des, right? He only knows that he talks to him, and he's never learned anything about who Des is. And Des says, well, you always usually just want to talk about jazz. You never really asked me any questions. And it turns out that, Joe has been so caught up in his own dreams and his own, desires that he hasn't really paid attention to people like Des, who's been in his life for a long time. And, 22 doesn't mean to, but kind of brings this like really cool moment forward that I think will hopefully push their friendship, right, and their relationship in a better spot.
Yeah, hopefully Joe follows up with that.
Yeah, Joe just was like, yeah, so I fucking played some jazz music, man, and like,
back to this shit. And Des is like, yeah, so I got the courage to go back to vet school. He's like, yeah, whatever. So I'm playing with Dorothea. Imagine.
It's like, damn, Joe's still a dick.
Now, was Des the magical Negro role that you were talking about? Or was
no, I was talking about the guru, Moonwind. I was saying that like if they
Moonwind, the actual okay.
If I don't like, what if they had made Joe that kind of role? Because in the original scripting, it could have been a very different scenario, but luckily they didn't do that. So
but imagine they go like Aladdin Genie.
Oh boy.
But Jamie Foxx loves to sing. He's good. So.
There's another cool part of this barber scene shop moment too, where Paul, like another patron of the barber shop, he's kind of making fun of Joe and how he's kind of a failure, and 22 says, Paul, he's just criticizing me to cover up the pain of his own failed dreams, and it hits Paul pretty hard, right? Like, it's comical, but at the same time, like, she kind of hits the nail on the head. And it seems like Paul is kind of depressed by this. And we actually see him again later, and he's still kind of depressed, and I think,
then his entire world gets turned upside down by, Jerry or Terry?
I believe Terry,
right?
Terry, yeah.
Terry, he's right, Terry.
Yeah, but like, when you think about that, people do that all the time, right? They love to tear you down. They love to minimize or your accomplishments and make you feel like you're less than. And I think that's because...
When did they do anything?
Right, because they feel inferior, and they need to make themselves feel better by putting you down. And I think, I'll speak for myself. I know I've done it in maybe inadvertently in the past, where I'll be like, oh whatever, they did this, but like they're still a loser. They're still this, because you want to make yourself feel better, and you don't realize that that's not the way to do it. You don't have to.
I've done that.
Yeah, it sucks, and it's a shitty thing to do, and I think a lot of people do it, and I'm sure almost everyone's done it at least once, whether you realize you were doing it or not. And it's not worth pulling down someone's accomplishment. Even if they're a shitty person, focus on what makes them shitty, right? Instead of what they've actually done. That's an accomplishment. So I think that's pretty accurate, and we see it all the time. And 22 is very blunt and kind of just throws this on Paul.
22 is also able to hold court in this barbershop. Like, I love the fact that when they start talking, like, through Joe's body, everybody starts listening and relating. And it's kind of like, what? Like, when it comes to the Des thing, think of how many interesting stories you have in your head. The person next door to you has a bunch of those too. Like, if you just get to know someone. But also with all of the other people there, everyone's going through this. Like the same, like the reason they were able to relate to 22 is because they all have souls. Like everyone's able to relate to it, like the same thing. And they're like, yeah, like we don't ever want to talk about it. We never want to bring it up. We don't ever want to answer honestly when someone says, how are you?
Yeah. Right.
but maybe if we stopped and said like, you know what? Not well.
I think 22 also does active listening, which is something most people don't do, right? Like how many times when you're in a conversation are you thinking about the next thing you're going to say rather than what the person's saying to you?
Wait, what? Huh?
Yeah, exactly. See? Right? Like, like someone will be talking about something and you're just thinking about, all right, well, I want to tell them about this story or this situation or the next thing you want to talk about. I mean, hell, I do it sometimes when we're talking on this podcast, right? Looking at my notes, but
I do too. We
right?
both do it.
Yeah, it happens.
Right, I got to make sure what I'm going to say is going to be like, spot on. All right.
Yeah, and I think 22 just kind of lives in the moment. Like she's just like talking and she'll say what comes to her mind next. Sometimes, it's very blunt and can be kind of upsetting, but like she's not sitting there ignoring people. And I think that's what Joe kind of realizes about, where he's kind of failed. He hasn't given those same opportunities. He hasn't listened to other people in his life. He's always shut them out because it's about his dream, right? Of being a jazz musician. He's shut his mom out. He shuts Des the barber out. He wants to fulfill his dream at whatever cost.
Now, this idea of 22 being in Joe's body and being able to speak through him and being able to eventually walk and use his body and everything was so interesting to me because it kind of makes me think, like, do we already have our personality and soul picked out? I mean, not accounting for trauma we'll face on Earth, and even depending on if you agree of where we come from. Let's say it's just the soul universe, though. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Let's say, like, the version that I am now, the version speaking on this podcast, is that the soul that's always been in me, but my body hasn't physically been able to say those words or, because in a lot of ways, like, there's some things you still do that you did when you were a kid and you're like, oh, fuck, like, I'm the same person. Yeah. Like, yeah.
So, but on the other end, you could be a totally different person than you were 10, 15, 20 years ago, they're doing an MTV Real World reunion from the original cast from 1992 in New York City, and it's 29 years later. And I never watched it, but my girlfriend did, and she wants me to watch a reunion with her, so we watched a bunch of episodes last night, and they actually brought up a lot of race stuff, which was really interesting. There's two black cast members living with a bunch of white people, so they were all kind of learning about each other, and one of them was a social activist. Anyway, my point is that, these people 29 years later, a lot of them are very different. And the things that they didn't understand or had different, concepts of or, were partying back in the day, they've really changed their personalities. So, I guess you could argue, are you finding your personality over time? Is it, like you said, is it there and you just have to kind of uncover it? I don't know, because you can change so much.
Yeah, like who knows who I'm going to be 10 years from now? Maybe that's the version that, like, came out of my mom's cesarean section. But
you'll be voting for Trump Jr. or Don Jr. or whatever.
Exactly. There's no way. And God, who do they fucking run from that family? If they were, they can't. He's gonna have to get an external.
The little one. What's the little one's name?
Barron.
No, probably
7
Ivanka.
foot tall little
Ivanka's
one.
clearly the smartest one in the family, so they're probably gonna
Ivanka.
run her.
Yeah, she would be the one, and you get first women president too.
Yep.
So even the conservatives I knew who were happy that Kamala was like a woman in the White House as VP, they would vote for Ivanka a million times over.
They'd be like, look, she's a strong, powerful woman.
There's a short line where they're trying to hail a cab, and Joe says through the cat's voice, he goes, oh, this would be tough even if I weren't in a cat's body or something like that. Like, once again, like, they don't make it a point to, focus on that, but they do mention it. They put in the jazz, they put in the barbershop, like they put in black stuff because he, like, at least they stay authentic to him as a character, as as a person of color, but yeah, that's all they would say about it. Oh, even if I wasn't a cat, it would be tough to get it.
Yeah, there was early in the film when Joe first talks to his mom and she's like, you're going to take that position, right? And she's kind of giving him shit for following his dream, right? She says a couple of things that I thought was interesting. One was she mentions how she struggled to give him an education and she's sick of seeing him struggle after she worked so hard so that he wouldn't have to. And you know, I mean,
unfortunately valid a little
right?
bit.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, I mean, in today's world, education doesn't mean you're not going to struggle by any means, but you know, obviously that was her intention, and she really wanted to see him be successful by this point, and you know, the fact that she had to work so hard so that you work so hard so your kids don't have to. They always say, and obviously, you know, he's still working hard. He's working, you know, his teaching gig. He's doing his music gigs on the weekends or whatever it might be. You know, she says, you know, he could put his dead end gigging behind him, and playing music will finally be his real career. And, you know, it just shows like how people don't really respect what you do or what you love. And I think as much as his mom's good intentioned, and Joe can be dense about certain things, you know, she doesn't understand how much it means to him. And I think that's kind of sad.
And on the whole, you have a lot of people who have a similar sentiment to the arts. You know, they're like, oh, you know, it's a waste of a career, blah blah blah. But like, they don't realize how much the arts like affect their lives.
Yep.
Like, you know, obviously there's science to it, but you know, who do you think makes your fucking car look cool and aerodynamic at the very least? Right. Who do you think designs it? Who do you think makes your movies, your cartoons?
Well, look at this pandemic, right? What did people do?
Yes.
They stayed home and they watched fucking Netflix movies, right? Like, or played video games or read comics or whatever, you know, form of entertainment you enjoy. If you didn't have that shit, well, you would have gone crazy. You would have been stuck inside with nothing to do. And people would have gone absolutely batshit and just fucking not been able to find a way to get through it. But we had these things, and you know, was it still difficult? You know, yeah, of course. Yes. But finding things you can enjoy to take your mind off a pandemic that's killing millions of people, it definitely helps. And without the arts, you wouldn't have that.
Now we also see him confront his mom later on in the movie after 22 rips Joe's pants while in his body. And you know, this was also a great moment where he's finally able to, you know, to tell her, like, listen, like, this is who I am. And he decides not to run, you know, which 22 says to him. Like, it's interesting. You can always look at yourself. Like, he's literally looking at a reflection of himself and seeing who he really is. And 22's like, oh, should I run away like you usually do? Like, because she's not afraid to say anything. She doesn't know that that's going to, like, you know, make him, you know, think, oh, shit, like, that's who I am. So
yeah.
So he decides that he is going to come clean. And I do think it's interesting, too, that, like, his mom is also in the arts. Like, her sewing is an art, you know?
But I think she looks at it as more of a practical position, right?
It also is, yeah.
You know what I mean? This scene, they finally, thanks to 22, they finally have that heart-to-heart. Because I think he was afraid to speak his mind to her and tell her how he really felt. And 22 kind of does it for him. Which is upsetting, right? It's his mom, and he loves her, and he knows what she gave up for him. But you know, it's important.
Well, but I think when they make that when they do that turn, it's him telling her though. Like
it is.
The cat was telling 22 the whole time.
Not at first though. Well, yeah, like he's speaking his mind, and 22 says it, but Joe doesn't want to say it to his mom.
It started because 22 says something. Yeah.
Like Joe's like, no, don't say that. You know, tell her I'm sorry, But finally, that kind of opens up the conversation, and I think that in so many ways, you know, being able to be open and honest about, you know, your feelings about, you know, anything with the people you love is really important. And if you don't do that, then you're gonna regret it, right? And you know, it can be tough. You can have some really tough conversations. I think I've joked on the podcast a few times about some conversations I've had with my parents, my stepdad and my mom, and it hasn't always been easy. It's definitely been difficult, but I feel better afterwards. I feel like, you know, I got something off my chest, and maybe you guys can see each other a little better. So it's important to have those conversations. And, you know, thanks to 22 kind of being the middleman here, it really works for them. And his mom fixes his pants, right, and helps him get ready for this audition, or actually, you know, not even an audition anymore.
Yeah, at this point, yeah, he's got the gig, which he loses
kind of,
because
yeah.
Dorothea sees him, you know, with ripped pants and a cat, you know.
Well, she sees him in a hospital gown.
Oh, was he in the hospital gown? I thought he was already in his suit by then.
He jumps into her taxi, and she's just like, wow, fuck this guy, you know? It's like, what if he just had a heart attack?
She says that in Pixar's Soul. Fuck this guy. But his former student is such a, you know, like, you know, he was inspired so much that he's like, listen, like, I know you're good. Like, show up tonight looking like $1 million. I'll see if I can get you the gig. And, you know, Joe's mom not only fixes his pants, she brings out the suit that belonged to his father, I believe.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And Joe looks good between the haircut and everything. Joe's having a great day. It's the best day he's had in years, and 22 is in his body.
I know. It's kind of sad. And his mom even goes to see him play. Right?
Yes.
She goes with her
that
friends.
was beautiful. Dude, I cried my fucking eyes out watching this movie. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, the stuff that upsets me about it is more like I'm disappointed.
Right,
like,
right. It's a good
like,
film.
Oh, come on,
it's
guys.
It's a good film. It really.
I think so.
It does. It accomplishes what it sets out to, and I think that's important. But
and it's also pretty funny too. I think
it is right. Yeah, when his mom's leaving, she's like, "I gotta get home. We're old." It's like there's funny moments like that. But and I think this all kind of leads to him finally. He shows up at the club. Right, he's back in his body, and he's
Thierry catches them.
What's that?
Thierry catches them and takes them out of their bodies, and that's when the all.
Oh, Terry. I'm sorry. I was like, who are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know who Thierry is.
Yeah, that's the all is lost moment. Basically finds 22 and Joe separated. They're back in the great beyond or before, whichever you want to call it.
Because 22 didn't want to give up the body, right? 22 is like, I want to stay.
Yeah, 22 was like living is fucking awesome, and Joe's like, you don't even like living. I'm the reason. Like, he says, you were in my body. You only liked life because you had my memories. Like, you liked my life, not your life. And and they had this falling out because Joe is now not going to be. He's going to have to go to the great beyond. But I think 22 actually does give him the Earth pass.
Right.
And he goes back to his body. 22 goes to become a lost soul. After playing the gig.
Yeah,
which Joe's great at. It's a little bittersweet. It's not exactly what he had expected, which, as somebody who has performed stand-up comedy and acted in front of live audiences, that can happen.
Yeah. He says he thought it would feel different, right? And then he says to Dorothea, like, well, what next? And she's like, come back tomorrow and we do it again.
Yeah, like, guess what? It's similar to teaching. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to work, you're going to work. Even if it's something you love doing, you're going to be doing it repeatedly every day.
Yeah, I feel like there's almost this feeling that you think is going to be like, there's almost like this achievement unlocked moment, right? Where you're just like,
yep.
You do it and you're like, all right, I did it. And you feel different. You feel better and you never have to do it again because you did it. But that's not really the way it goes, right? Very rarely does it happen like that. And that's, he finally got to play and he's going to keep playing and he's going to keep playing. And, he may still never be as successful as he thought he would be. And it just doesn't feel the way he thought it would, which is, like you said, kind of bittersweet.
And when he gets home, he discovers that in his pockets are a bunch of items that 22 kept.
Yeah.
She kept the spool that was used to make this suit and fit it to him. She kept the lollipop that Des gave her at the barber shop. She finished that one and then took another couple road lollipops. She kept the bagels she was eating. She kept the pizza crust. She kept I forgot what those things are. Those little helicopter seeds that spin down from the trees and float to the ground and glide to the ground. She kept all of that, and that's when Joe realizes that. Well, actually, I don't know what Joe realizes, because I first thought her spark was living. Like, just your spark can fucking be life, and that's okay. You don't have to be the most creative person in the world. That was one of the things I got out of this.
Yeah, I think what he realizes is that he's already experienced all of this, and 22 hasn't had that chance. And if he takes her life pass, her Earth pass, she'll never get to. And I think he realizes that, like, it's just not fair. It's not right. And, he got to have his moment, and it wasn't what he expected, but now he's able to give her the opportunity to kind of have these same experiences and let her live the life that he took for granted.
What a beautiful way to put it. That's exactly what he did. And it turns out, now I thought that her spark was living, like I said, but the counselor Jerry's, they tell Joe that, like, hey, listen, like, you thought it was your spark? Like, no. I think they say in the movie, I don't know if they say it specifically, but Joe says that it means that that 22 was ready to live. Like once you found something
Yes.
that can, oh my God, hold on. It's going to get a little emotional. Like once you found something that you're able to get in the zone with, like you're able to escape this fucking world, because while it is beautiful things, it is food and it is happiness and joy and it's love and it's fucking, and it's drinking and smoking and it's creating and it's so many awesome things. It is also a terrible, terrible place. You take what you love and you leave what you don't. But it is that too. So being able to escape, being able to find something that you can put your or brings your soul out into the zone, that means you're ready to live, because you're able to have something. I think that's therapy. Your hobby, your creative thing, whatever it is therapy. It's a moment for you to get outside of yourself but also you're inside yourself. You know what I mean? Like you're in your own head, but out of your body. I am not high right now.
It's a way to express yourself for sure, right?
It is.
Like when I write certain things, I feel like I'm able to express stuff I don't know how to say out loud. Whether it's, even if it's about another character who just has traits that maybe from me or things I've experienced, and whether it's making music or drawing or whatever it is, you can express yourself in a way, and I think that's so important. And 22, needs to have that opportunity. So, Joe, he decides to give her back the Earth Pass and realizes that she's lost now, so he decides to go and save her, right? And he tracks her down. He has Moonwind to help him, and they wound up having this like little heart-to-heart moment where he rushes into like her little, I guess, depression bubble or whatever you want to call it that's around her, to find the inner her.
Yeah, it's like keeping her from him. It's like this shield, of negative feelings and every bad thing that anyone's ever said to her, including stuff he said or
exactly
that she interpreted. He didn't call her an idiot, did he? Did he call 22 an idiot?
I don't remember. Me at one point.
In this version, he does. Like in the version that 22 remembers, he calls her an idiot or calls them an idiot. I just wanted to say that much like Joe and 22, when you're writing, you're able to speak your voice through another's lips.
Whoa.
Think about it, motherfucker.
Whoa.
Yeah, I said it, dude. There's some aggressive soul searching and finding that we're doing on today's podcast. Find your passion, bitches. Fucking do it. I'm going to be like Wesley Gibson at the end of Wanted. What the fuck have you done lately? Live your dreams. Don't let your dreams. I'm going to be Shia LaBeouf and James McAvoy. All right, we're getting off the...
Yeah, so they had this moment, he talks to her, he explains to her, that she found, her reason for living is to live, right? Like she's finally ready to live, and she doesn't need to have a passion for a specific, hobby or anything yet. She's just ready to experience life. And
another thing that also hit me, having a million different things I like doing.
Right? Yeah, it's like, hey, I like bagels and pizza, I like video games, I like comics. Whatever it might be.
I wasn't sure if you were talking about 22 and then yourself, or just all around.
Maybe,
like,
I was doing. Everyone, we all have things that we like.
And we all do love bagels, pizza, video games, and comics, hopefully.
Right. So then she decides to take the Earth Pass. He helps find her again, and she's gonna go to Earth. And he says to her, she's nervous. She's nervous about messing it up, right? And she doesn't know. For the first time ever, I think she's really kind of scared. And
he says, "That's all it is, Miles."
Yeah, basically, right.
Right.
Oh man. So maybe he's Miles growing up. And so she's nervous, and he says to her, "I'll go with you, as far as I can." And even though he knows he can't go all the way with her, he'll jump with her and hold her hand.
He can't make it to Earth with her.
Yeah.
He can't go all the way with her. All right. He didn't give her his Letterman jacket.
Oh God.
Or buy her a malted.
That's gross.
Sorry.
So they jump, and he's holding her hand, and she's scared. She won't even look, and he tells her to open her eyes because they're staring at Earth, right? And it's beautiful.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Her Earth Pass starts kind of blinking and pulling her, towards a certain spot, and he kind of gives her this look like, you're ready. And I think she is ready, and let's go. And then he returns back. They're ready to go to the great beyond. But everyone here is so inspired by what he's done, because he's inspired 22, that they actually give him another chance to go back to Earth and live again. And it's a cool ending. He he gets to go back to his body, and she kind of asks him, how are you going to spend your life? And he says, I'm not sure, but I do know I'm going to live every minute of it. And I think that's really important. It's really important that we all do that. No matter whether it's, like we said, sitting on the couch and watching Netflix, or meeting up with your friends, or whatever it is, just make sure you're living life, and you're not, getting in your own head and trying to figure out what you're going to do, 10 years from now. Just kind of be alive and enjoy it. And I think that's what he's finally ready to do, thanks to 22.
Don't get stuck in the motions. That's what machines are for. And we're more complicated machines than that.
Yep.
So, did you see the post-credit scene where 22 is born?
No, I didn't actually.
Yeah, she's born in Syria, and Biden fucking bombs her.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That was a great episode.
And then she goes back. She's like, are you fucking kidding me?
She goes back to the Great Beyond. She's like, God damn it.
I didn't even get one bagel.
Jerry, Terry, fuck all of you. Oh, speaking of Terry, I wanted to say one thing. When he's looking to find out who Joe is, because he faked who he was as a mentor.
Right.
Terry makes this comment where he says, so many Garcias, when he's looking through a bunch of names.
Yeah, that's right. He does.
That was a weird comment. Does he mean, if it's the afterlife, does he mean that Latino people are dying at disproportionately higher rates than other people?
I think he just means it's a common last name.
I was like, fuck you. Say so many Smiths. Fucking.
Yeah, yeah.
Keep that shit out of your mouth, Thierry. Or whoever wrote it. Oh, you know who was one of the directors of this movie was, by the way?
Who?
Kemp Powers, the writer of One Night in Miami.
Oh, yes.
And obviously writing staff on Soul.
Oh, hey, we did, wow.
And Star Trek Discovery. So Kemp Powers makes his return back to the Politipop podcast. I don't know why you didn't catch that so many Garcias line, but less than ideal representation stuff aside, which once again I realized I have the immense privilege of saying that.
Yeah.
I do think that just as an existential movie and something that really gets you to think about your own fucking life. They have that line about you can't crush a soul up here. That's what life on Earth is for.
Oh yeah, I actually wrote that down too. It was a great line.
Yeah. But I was into it. There are a lot of jokes that we didn't mention there. So watch the movie because it's just it's worth at least 2 watches. I got mine in. I did my part. I'm good.
Right.
But yeah. And if you're satisfied with Soul, are we watching something next week or are we doing a housekeeping, Ty?
We will be doing a housekeeping episode.
All right. So for those of you who have been like, we love the housekeeping episodes. How come you guys aren't talking about current events and fucking, Biden and blah, blah, blah.
Stimuluses and bombing Syria. We want to know more.
Yeah, we can't give you more. We can't even tell you about credit scores coming around in 1989. But what we can tell you to do is make sure that you rate and review us if you want to tune in to us next week and listen to that housekeeping. You can rate and review us wherever you find your podcast, but ideally on Apple Podcasts, especially if you want to have your review read at the top of the show. We do have a YouTube channel where you can like our videos and subscribe to the page. You can find some outtakes on there. I'm not sure if I'm going to be making them a regular thing for future episodes. You can find us on Twitter at PolitiPopPod, on Instagram at PolitiPopPodcast. I'm a lost soul doing a podcast. And you can email us at politipopcast@gmail.com. And as always, find our show notes and sources at politipoppodcast.wordpress.com. And special thanks to all of you for listening. Special thanks to Benny and the Jets for your review. That's the word. Thank you. And also to Antonia Chava for logo design, who we will have on when we do it. I don't have an actual date yet, but drumroll. We will have Antonia on for our WandaVision episode.
WandaVision? Never heard of it.
Yeah, neither have I. It's this new thing that Antonia made up specifically. She's gonna tell us about it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's like the Oculus, but you see through the first-person perspective of Cosmo's wife from the Fairly Odd Parents.
That sounds amazing.
That's called Wanda. I'm Cosmo, and I'm Wanda.
Somebody do this, please.
That's you. You got suck my magical penis, Wanda. All right.
Oh my.
No, they pretend to be fish most of the time. I'm not sure if a fish has a penis. But special thanks to all of you and to Antonia Chava for logo design. For the Politipop podcast, I have been Mike Booch.
I have been Ty.
Remember, no matter what you're watching, what you're reading, what you're playing, what you're listening to, never stop thinking, never stop learning. Make sure you find your spark, get to the zone, and always read between the lines.
And scene.
Alrighty.